Hi! This week on this Insta Live thing that's sweltering because England is hot as fuck right now, I'm joined by esteemed writer and historian William Dalrymple, which is a weird one. I didn't think I'd get that kind of a shock to reaction as I got when I put up this image of William Dalrymple. So he and I go back a little while. As drinking buddies, actually. Of course, he's like a famous author and he's written a bunch of books and is very, very, very well known in the literary world. But yeah, I think we sort of roll more socially, which is a weird combination. I imagine us rolling down the street. You couldn't imagine anyone more diametrically opposed to me than William Dalrymple. So this is going to be quite an interesting chat. And here he is. Here he is. Big Willie in the house. Yes. Is he going to join? Is he going to connect? Is he going to have as good an internet connection as all my brown friends?
We're
Is it going to
both
work?
full. No, we're both full.
Willie! I can't hear you, bruv. Hang on,
I said we're both full. We've got the same
hear
hair.
you. I can't hear you. Can you hear me?
I can hear you very well. How are you doing?
Can everyone hear? And can you hear me okay? We'll try unplugging this.
I can hear you beautifully.
Okay. Do you want to try again, Will?
I'll go off and try again. Leave.
You know what it is? I'm a moron. I've got my connections the wrong way around. Hang on a second. There you go. That should be better. Okay, technical issues. Going live with William Dalrymple. I think it was my issues. My wiring was a bit crossed. You should be picking up my mic now. Hi.
Okay, can you hear me now?
I can hear you. It was my fault. It was entirely my fault. For someone that's a professional audio person, I fucked that up quite largely, didn't I? Yeah.
One of your main talents
is fucking up audio. Thanks, bruv. Wicked. Cheers. But thanks for getting up out of bed to join me, by the way. I appreciate you.
I had a good lunch. I had a good long lunch and needed a little bit of recovery. But no, I'm now back in the land of the living.
See, I thought it was preparation just to get your energy up to deal with my nonsense.
No, I had some friends around.
Oh, nice. So it wasn't just my fault.
No, for once.
How have you been, man? How have you been? And how are you back in London? I thought you were in Delhi.
So I'm always in London this time of year. I do 3 months, 9 months, and it's normally June, July, and August in this country, and the rest of the year in Delhi.
But that's the thing.
Because, as you know,
how have you travelled in lockdown and stuff? That's the other thing.
Well, there's been these. British Airways hasn't been flying, and most airlines haven't been flying, but Air India has been doing these rescue flights, Vande Bharat rescue flights. One of which was just went off the runway in Kerala earlier in the week.
That awful news.
That was the same. That was the same thing that got me home.
Well, I'm glad you landed safe and sound, bruv.
Well, at least Heathrow is luckily built on the edge of a cliff, which helps, unlike Calicut.
Yes.
But yeah, no. So we came back. My whole family was there, and we came back looking like we were in some sort of Satan bug film with full COVID protection stuff provided by Air India. So we
That's
had
cool. So you didn't have to have your own sort of carrier bags and stuff.
We had our own masks, visors, and on top of that, anyone who was in a middle seat had a kind of full lab coat. We looked like sort of butchers going off to sort of sell pork chops on a Saturday market or something.
Nice. Just lost it.
But we're fine. No one got ill. And we managed to get the timing right. We were in India, in Delhi, when it was fine there, but very bad in London.
Right.
And then we jumped just as it was getting bad in India and getting better in London. So far I've been okay, but I'm not sure how we're getting back to India. India's still closed. And come September, I mean, all my work is there and everything. So I hope very much I will be able to get back.
Yeah. Well, I hope so too.
You're there, Breg. How are you?
Everyone's coming in. It's quite nice. Mega's here. Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining us, by the
No,
way.
no.
So, some background as to what the hell this is. Every week through lockdown for the past, I think this is 21st week, maybe. I've been interviewing a dear friend of mine over drinks. Well, I'm generally drinking bourbon and talking nonsense at a friend. And Will has very kindly agreed to join me this week. So this is not going to be an academic discussion.
I on the coffee.
But I just wanted to caveat, this is not going to be an academic discussion whatsoever.
No, I've always looked to you as the fount of academic wisdom. This is a huge disappointment.
I mean, there you go. There you go. It was more for people that were sort of watching this for any sort of gleaming insights from yourself, which may not be forthcoming. But at the end of the day, to also save William from my buckwass and nonsense, there's a little question mark button at the bottom of your screen. You can hit that and ask questions, and I can vet them. So any marriage proposals or anything kind of off is not going to be getting through. You know what I mean? So,
I think we stick with the buckworth.
I think so too. I think so too. So listen, dude. Okay, you're this esteemed writer. You've written so many books. Obviously, the first book I encountered was White Moguls, because that was a fucking smash. That was like big everywhere.
That was the one your friend Selena drew a picture on, as I remember.
That is true. That's very true. You autographed my copy, and then my dear friend Selena drew a massive penis on your autograph, which was just fantastic. Which actually just actually sums up our relationship in a nutshell. But yeah, so White Moguls came out, and that just changed. I mean, did that change everything for you as well?
I should interrupt Nerm and say this was the occasion, I think, when I was having a party at home, and I'd saved up the most expensive bottle of champagne I've ever bought, being a mean Scotsman. And there was a 50-year-old bottle of Dom Perignon in the back of the fridge. Halfway through the party, I was sitting down. I see commenting Nerm swinging it from the bottle.
I did not open that bottle. It was already open. I did not open that bottle. And that wasn't the same night as you came to my house and Selena drew penises all over your autograph, by the way.
Did she do it in your house rather than my house?
That was, the Dom Perignon... No, the Dom Perignon night was at your house, but I did not open that bottle. But I will repay the favour one day. I will get you back for that, because I feel terrible.
I like that. I did take the bottle off you and finish it. So.
I do regret. I was drinking. I swear I didn't open it. No matter what anyone says, I did not open that bottle. But the other night where Selena drew the penises all over your signature was at my house. After the Jaipur Lit Fest opening party, I think.
That's right, with Farah Manjour, she was there. Yeah.
Oh, no. When we dragged you through Shoreditch, which was fucking hilarious. There was like an army of us sort of brown crazy people dragging Will by his fucking beard through Shoreditch. It was amazing. And Shoreditch was like a shit. It was bedlam.
We didn't get out until dawn. I remember it well. Yeah.
So it was 50-year-old Dom Perignon. Really?
It was the most expensive thing I've ever bought in my life.
I'm Googling how much it costs just to know how much shit I'm in. I'm actually excellent. Right, Googling that shit. I was trying to ask you a serious question about your work, but fuck that. Let's go into... No, fuck that. We're down this rabbit hole now of how much I owe you in terms of booze. So fuck off. We're going to try and find this price now, and I'm going to get it. I have to take out a small loan.
No, I'm a Scotsman. I'm all for being repaid in full with interest. Don't worry.
This is true. We've had many alcohol-sodden nights, though. That's the other thing.
We have. Often with Bobby Friction and tow. Is Bobby watching? Is he around?
I don't know if Bobby's on there, actually. Yeah. I don't know where. I'll message him right now and say I'm on live with you. I'm sorry, bro. What was that? I couldn't hear you.
I said, Bobby's got better stuff to be doing than listening to us.
Actually, the last time we went drinking was quite insane.
Remind me.
It was before the European referendum.
Oh God.
But let's not get into that. Let's not get into that.
I remember.
Yeah, let's not get into that at all. So okay. Let's get back on track with your career as well, and we'll have enough of our bullshit sprinkled throughout, I'm sure. So, White Moguls, did that have as much of an impact on your life as it did because of its success?
I don't know. I mean, I've been very lucky in that my very first book, which was called In Xanadu, which I wrote when I was in college, that gone on to when it came out, there was a whole front page piece about it on the front of the Times. And so I was very lucky, you know, as a first author, everything depends on how that first book is received. You know, you're either dead in the water or you get a good start. And I had this very, very lucky break. It happened to be picked up by the Times, which, you know, could so easily not have happened.
Yeah.
And so I've always been lucky. Initially, it was mainly a British audience, and I was writing in my head very much, I suppose, for British people. And then by the time of, well, Jinns had a big audience in India. Of Jinn, the second book. And so ever since then, it's been Britain and India, then it spread to Europe. America still doesn't really feature. The last two books have spent 1 week on the New York Times top 10, but they're not big successes.
I mean, mate, they made it on the fucking New York Times top 10, and Barack Obama name-checked the Anarchy. So don't give me that. So
Barack Obama, but interestingly and significantly, Barack Obama chose the British edition. It has a different title in the States.
What's the title in the States?
When you're on a trip to Britain.
What's the title in the States?
Not surprising.
What is the title in the States?
In the States, it's called this is the British edition, called The Relentless Rise of the East India Company, and it's got a far more. It's called The Plunder of an Empire, or something like that in the States. It's far more sort of aggressive title. This one, I think, the English publishers were keen not to upset too many Brits before they bought the book.
Because it reminds me of Shashi Tharoor's book, the whole era of darkness in India, that was retitled for the UK to make it a bit more palatable for the English audiences. Was that a similar thing?
I mean, in a sense, my whole career over the last 20 years has been writing about the British and India. And it is a problem in that everywhere else in the world, in Australia, in Ireland, in America, but particularly obviously in India, people know the stuff the Brits got up to in the empire. And there's no problem at all about saying it very straight, that it was about loot, it was about plunder. And the British, you know, made their money. It's how they, you know, before the Industrial Revolution, there were two sources of wealth in Britain, other than just in agriculture. One was India, and the other was the Caribbean slave trade. So whenever you go around one of those big 18th century National Trust houses in Britain, they look as if Colin Firth's about to kind of come out in peach breeches and wade through a lake to the delight of collected women in bonnets. When you go to one of the houses, you remember that if it's an 18th century gorgeous Georgian house, the money for it almost certainly came from India or the slave trade, because there was no other fortunes being made at that time. With the Industrial Revolution at the end of the 18th century, you then get industrial wealth coming in from Manchester and the mills in Birmingham, that kind of stuff. But so the British have this sort of strange bubble that they're in vis-a-vis their own empire. And everywhere else, it's on the curriculum. So if you're Australian, you learn about the iniquities of the Brits, wiping out Aborigines in Tasmania and having hunting expeditions to kill the Tasmanians and this sort of stuff. If you're Irish, you learn about the potato famine. If you're Indian, you learn about the Amritsar massacre. But as I'm sure you know, as you went to school here, none of this is on the curriculum.
It's absolutely true. Yeah.
100%. You learn a lot about the Tudors, and then you move from Henry VIII to Hitler. And there's a brief stop on the way to teach you about how the British liberated the slaves, and a little bit about Florence Nightingale. So the impression is given that the Brits were always on the angels' side.
Yeah, very
benevolent. They were anti-fascist, they were anti-slavery. And the whole story of how they made war in almost every continent, subjugated peoples, and made their fortune by looting, is simply not told in British schools. And so when they think of the Raj, the British think of merchant ivory films. They think of handsome chaps in 1930s outfits playing polo or croquet with handsome maharajas and smiling elephants, and it's all similar tea parties. And you know, one can laugh about this, but it's actually a real problem, because the Brits just don't know what they've done. And so when they arrive in India, they think everyone loves them. They think that the Raj was wonderful. We ended it by giving Nehru Edwina Mountbatten, and everyone was happy. It was quits. And they're genuinely surprised and upset when they discover that, you know, they're not regarded with great love around the rest of
Yeah.
the world, and many people do regard them as bad as the Third Reich, or at least as, among the villains of history. And so it's not easy to pitch a book about this period, because the expectations in this country are quite different to the expectations in India or the expectations in America or Australia.
Yeah. And I'm guessing that there's got to be some sort of a disconnect between, forgive me for saying, but how you look and how you speak and what you write about. Because it's quite like, if I was someone new, I'd be like, well, why are you writing in criticism about Britain when you seem so British? You know what I mean? You seem so, I mean, you're a white dude wearing a kurta at the end of the day. And that's quite an interesting perspective. Is it? Okay, well,
I just got out of bed.
It's your pajama, literally your pajama, you basket. Thanks, dude. Thanks for making the effort to come and talk to me. I appreciate that. Cheers, bro.
No, I wouldn't do it for everyone. No, I wouldn't do it for everyone.
At least you're wearing clothes. That's a start. But yeah, I mean, that juxtaposition of your of you and your work, does that ever get you into any sort of trouble?
There's two things, I think. One is that I'm Scottish.
Right.
I'm born and brought up in Scotland. Never went to England until I was 8.
Right.
So in Scotland there is a different, we're quite used to the idea of the English being the villains, of redcoats chasing Bully Prince Charlie, and massacring Highlanders and all that sort of stuff. And I grew up very much. Also, I had the nanny who brought me up was a kind of Irish Fenian who brought me up on Tales of the Potato Famine. I remember being shown pictures of babies being eaten by their own mothers, starving mothers, and this sort of thing, aged 7 or 8. So on one hand, I had a very straightforward upbringing. My dad was Sword of Honour at Sandhurst and Pillar of the Establishment, was in India at Partition with the British Army, all that sort of stuff. On the other hand, there was this whole narrative at school of the redcoats being the enemy and having caused the potato famine. So I've always had that ability to. The other thing is I only discovered this 20 years ago, but it turns out that I've got every sort of variety of Indian blood in my veins too. I've got a Bengali great grandmother. I've got some Mughal blood from Hyderabad, and I've got a whole load of cousins with names like Rizwan and Isra Sultan and this sort of thing.
You're not about our friend Riz, are you? You're suddenly related to Riz Ahmed all of a sudden. Like, what the fuck? That'd be quite a scandal, wouldn't it? That'd be hilarious.
He's got a different set of the family gene.
That would be fucking hilarious if you and Riz turned out to be related. That'd be so funny.
Or Selena.
Yeah, exactly. All of our crazy mates. That's nuts. Well, actually, Riz is quite less crazy compared to Selena, to be honest with you.
But I think one of the great liberating thing for anyone in any circumstance, whether you're an Indian who moves to America or whether you're a Brit who moves to India, to travel and to see the world outside the bubble of your own country changes your attitude to the world, obviously.
Yeah.
I mean,
what is the attraction to India for you then? Because like, out of everyone I know, and you're the fourth writer that I've spoken to. There was like Nikesh Shukla, Nikita Gill, obviously our dear friend Jeet, which is how we met, and yourself. And out of all of them, like, Nikita's work is very much about deities and goddesses and mythology, but you seem to be the most knowledgeable about Indian history of anyone I know of any colour. That's
all the other writers you've talked to are novelists,
but you're an actual historian.
But I'm a historian, I do. And I had this weird thing when I was researching this book on White Moguls, of discovering that in a file in the archives at Edinburgh, there were all these letters from this woman Israt Begum to her brother Hugh Dalrymple, and there was this. In the 18th century, it was very common for families to be separated according to skin color. So when you have a mixed marriage, a white guy marries an Indian woman or vice versa, an Indian man marries a white woman, quite often the kids are radically different colors. You have a very fair son and then you have a dark daughter, or however it is. And the practice in the 18th century was that basically the fair kids got sent back to England if they were fair enough to escape detection. And this is the phrase you find over and over again in the letters. And they could have full brothers and sisters who they grew up with, who they loved, who they spent their childhood with, who then goes to a completely different life path because they happen to be 1 or 2 shades darker.
And their Indianness, I guess, would be hidden as much as possible, or would they be accepted as Anglo-Indian?
In this place, there were 2 boys and they were both fair enough to escape detection. And they were brought up in India, but as teenagers, they get sent back to England. They get sent to secondary school in England. This is the 1780s, 1790s. And they are brought up as Christians, and they speak English. In this case, Israt Begum was too dark to escape detection. So she remains a Shia Muslim and is married off to one of her father's officers. And the reason this letter existed was that the officer died and she was left a widow and she was penniless. So she has to write to her brother to ask for cash to make ends meet. And they obviously haven't been in touch for a while. Now, what was interesting was that the letter she writes is written in beautiful cursive Persian, which was the language of a very common, courtly, and educated language. Everyone used Persian in India around the 1830s.
Okay.
And she then goes to a bazaar or gets somebody else to transcribe it into English. So you get her original script with the English translation on top. And it's there in the file, and with all the news about her other sister and her children and all this sort of thing. And there's no reply because this is just the inward letters that have survived. So I don't know whether he sent money or not to his sister. But I mean, certainly the letter wasn't bundled up and thrown in the fire. The letter is still there, which implies that he probably did do something.
When did this interest start for you? Like in terms of delving into history? I mean, you studied history, I presume, and then did India just sort of spark something in your head, or was that something that you were always interested in?
The history was always there. And my first visit I told you how I didn't go to England until I was 8. That first visit to England was because I was in that stage of my life, a mad keen. I was absolutely fixated with archaeology.
Okay.
And I came down to London to see the Tutankhamun exhibition at the British Museum. I was brought down by my parents. I was longing to see this thing. It was a big deal. There were queues around the block. It was one of the first big mega exhibitions. And I was obsessed with ancient Egypt at that point. And I made and I remember coming out of the British Museum and seeing a double-decker bus and some Hare Krishna, white Hare Krishna devotees with tablas or whatever, dancing around the street. And I remember these as sort of this extraordinary vision. So different.
What year was this? What year was this?
No, I suppose if I was 8, it must have been the early 1970s, 1974 or 5 or something.
Right.
I was, this was completely different from anything I'd grown up with. And then I had no interest in India. I wanted to be an archaeologist still. In my after leaving school, before I went to college, I got myself a job on a dig in Iraq, digging Assyrian stuff. That was what I wanted to do. I wanted to dig up Assyrian bulls and discover Nineveh and all that stuff. Indiana Jones.
Just like The Omen as well. The start of The Omen when they find this deity in Syria, or is it Iran? Actually, I think it was Iran. But yeah,
I will get The Omen out. It's a long time I've seen it. Yeah. Anyway, so that plan fell through because Saddam Hussein closed down the British School of Archaeology, and he said it was a nest of British spies, which it may well have been. I never made it there. And my friend was going to India, so not at all of my own volition. I mean, very much as a second bet, as a fallback. Ended up flying to Delhi. I knew nothing about it. I had no interest in it. And had a job in a school in Dehradun teaching. And it was like a thunderclap. I mean, within a couple of weeks of arriving there, I knew this is where I wanted to spend a lot of my life. And I spent 9 months in India before going to college. And the first thing I did next time was to come back. And I've lived there all my adult life. So that's what, in a sense, made it so weird finding I had Indian blood, and that 8 generations of my family had been in India. That they were all living in Calcutta. There's graves all over Calcutta of these guys and plaques up in the churches and stuff. None of which I knew about when I went there, and when I fell in love with the place.
Yeah, but you ended up settling in Delhi because you fell in love with Delhi as a city.
Well, when I first came to Delhi, it's a very different place to what it is today. It was a tiny Sarkari Punjabi town. I
mean, you wrote about it in City of Gins, right? That was the.
Then I came back to write City of Gins. I came back as a young foreign correspondent in my early 20s, and wrote City of Gins on the side while I was working as a correspondent. And today it's this huge, everyone knows Delhi, huge megalopolis of 26 million people, terrible pollution, traffic jams, and the rest.
I mean,
But
getting to your farm was a shit show the last time I was there. It was just like, what the fuck is going on? It was a nightmare. I can only imagine what it was like back then. It must have been clear roads, or just really nice and peaceful.
No traffic at all. And I remember, if you went to have dinner with someone and you came back after 9:30, you would not see another car on the road. I remember being alone on the sort of Defence Colony flyover or Lodi Road, and just no other cars, particularly in winter.
Yeah.
It just fogged a little bit in the the street lights and empty roads. It's extraordinary seeing the change. It hasn't all been bad. I think people have a bad rap on it.
Oh, mate, I mean, I'm a Delhi boy. I mean, sorry, Bombay boy. I'm just, which is bizarre because I'm Gujarati and I feel it's interesting you said that you have family in Calcutta and all of those things, but felt this affinity to Delhi because I had a similar thing with regards to Gujarat and I have no feelings towards it whatsoever. Then I fell in love with Bombay, like massively. I'm just like, this is it.
You love your beloved Prime Minister now.
Oh, mate. Dude, of course. There is nothing but pride coursing through my veins at all of this. 100%. Yeah, totally. And just to clarify, I'm not drinking any booze whatsoever.
Anyway, so back to this. Yeah, Delhi. Now, I mean, it hasn't been entirely a negative thing. It was all government people and it was all Punjabis. Now, you have these whole areas of Delhi where the Northeasterners live in Humayunpur. You have the Siar Park where the Bengalis are. Yeah. You have and it's the one properly international city. Not international. It's the one properly national city in India where you will find people from every area of the. Calcutta is still Bengali dominated. Even Mumbai.
A white historian with a farmhouse with goats. I mean, it is quite the cosmopolitan melting pot of people.
The goats are very much that. There are currently 25 of them. One of them died last week. We worried that they'd been COVID, but there's still 24 left, providing us with lots of milk. The goats are doing very well. The pigeons are very well.
I didn't know you kept pigeons, dude. Were they just there?
It's the full Bollywood number. We have the full Mughal Azam outfit. We have a Kabutar Mahal.
I can just imagine, like, when the rain comes, you fuckers dancing around trees. You and the dupatta looking all bashful and shit. I can totally picture that. But yeah, I mean, apart from that, like, so Anarchy's coming out on paperback.
I'm usually mistaken for Madhubala. What? Sorry?
You what, dude? Sorry, what was that?
I'm usually mistaken for Madhubala on those.
Oh yeah, I can see that for sure. I can see it's the way you move those hips, bro. That'll do it. Yeah. But yeah, so Anarchy's coming out on paperback next week, right?
Here it is. First copy of the paperback.
Nice.
But only in Britain. The Indian one is still selling in hardback, so they've delayed the paperback there for a few months.
And then on your post on Instagram today, there's another book as well about your dear friend Bruce.
Yeah, this is a book about my friend Bruce. And Bruce worked with me for 20 years, and he was an extraordinary guy. He was there's a wonderful picture of him with his boyfriend here, walking somewhere in Afghanistan in his kit. And he was this sort of extraordinary gay Englishman who pitched up in Iran before the revolution, was at Isfahan University, and he was one of these guys that has the gift of language.
Did he help you translate some of the letters that you found for Anarchy?
He did all the Persian for all the books.
All that stuff.
White Mogul, Last Mogul, Return of a King, and Anarchy.
Because he's a pretty, like, just looking at the biography, you can see that he had such an amazing mind. He was like basically a living Rosetta Stone almost. He was, and
not only every European language that, including weird ones like Flemish that he spoke, but also Arabic, Persian, Pashto, Urdu, Hindi, had a little Sanskrit. And he also was one of the most knowledgeable men, and having him around, he used to come. What we used to do is little background here. So if you are writing about the early colonial or Mughal period, all the source material is in Persian, bizarrely.
Because you were saying it's the de facto language of royalty, right? So,
yeah, just like in a sense, Russians were using French as their diplomatic language in the 19th century. Everyone was using Persian up until about the 1830s. And even the Maratha court used Persian for their correspondence. Today, no one in India reads Persian. So if you can access that material as a historian, you have instant access to everything that other historians don't have access
Just don't, yeah.
And which was always in a sense, my USP, I think.
That's because you get to the stuff that people can't get to. But equally, does that mean that you have access to stuff in England that other people can't get to? Or is that just simply a matter of translation?
It isn't that no one else can get to it. It's, I mean, the British Library is open to anyone that wants to use it. I mean, I've seen you there. It's about the same is true of the Indian National Archives in Delhi. But Bruce had the facility not only to read 18th century Indian Persian, which was really a mixture of Persian with lots of Hindi and Urdu words, much more, much more full of what used to be called Hindustani, which is kind of the old name for this very courtly Urdu. And so to read 18th century Indian Persian, you have to be able to have both Urdu and Persian and a bit of Hindi.
I suppose it's like listening to sort of Asian radio stations in England and having that Urdu, Hindi, English mashup thing. You need to have an idea of all three of them, right? Right.
Exactly. But also the scripts are difficult. And not only do you have these difficult scripts, which are hard to read, but you also have this thing called shikasta, which is like Persian shorthand that scribes are using to talk to each other with, which don't have the diacritical marks, don't have the dots.
Right.
And Bruce he had this facility. So we would go to the British Library or to some weird little library. I mean, for example, there's a place called Tonk in south of Jaipur, between Jaipur and Jodhpur.
What a great name. What a great name. Tonk's fucking great. In East London slang, tonking means like hefty and muscular.
I know exactly what tonking means.
Yeah, okay, good. Maybe it's not East London slang. We'll get to the etymology of that word later, but please continue. Yeah.
And there's this extraordinary Nawabi library that no one's been to. Bruce could just, go in, charm everybody, photograph the stuff, and then come back to the farm and work with that. So over 20 years between, and I knew the history. He didn't know the history, but he knew the language and knew the script. Right. So we used to work on these texts together. And I don't know, over 20 years, he must have translated the best part of probably 60 major Persian histories and biographies and stuff, which no one else had read. They were new material, added hugely to the sort of credibility of the whole project.
Yeah.
And we started working together for White Moguls in 1999, and we worked on each of the successive books, and just finished the last one. And they're now going to be reprinted into one box set called the Company Quartet, which will be coming out as a box in order.
What are you mentioned this, like it started with White Moguls and it ends with Anarchy as this quadrilogy or whatever you want to call it.
I didn't write it in chronological order of that. I mean, chronological order, Anarchy tells the beginning of the story.
Right.
White Moguls follows next, then Return of a King, and finally the last Mogul is the end of the story.
Right.
But they work, if you rearrange them into chronological order, they'll work as 4-volume history.
This is like fucking Star Wars, isn't it? You can do the hatchet watching order of Star Wars and shit, but this is all just with like brown people and white people in India. But like, yeah, not so long ago.
Was not
the continent, not very far away.
If it smells like Star Wars, that would be great. And
hey,
so,
yeah. I was gonna. Okay, so before I jump forward on that, because we're talking about Star Wars and films and remakes, all that kind of stuff. One thing that I've got to say is that when I was, sorry.
Seeing all my friends turning up on coming closer to the scene.
Excellent. One thing I was going to say that when I was studying history as a kid in school, one of the things that I take away from that was the idea of multiple sources and cross verification, which you just touched on because you've got a fuckload of sources that no one else has got, but they can reinforce certain other historical accounts or disprove them and so on and so forth. But that idea of critical analysis of any source is just fucking lost in this current situation, right? Like it's just doesn't exist.
So the other thing that's very interesting to cross-reference is that most Indian history today is written out to the British Library. British Library, that one building next to King's Cross, has almost, if you're a PhD student, whether you're in Columbia University or...
And we've been drunk in there many times.
We have. And we even did an interview there once. Anyway,
I forgot about that. Yeah.
So all those, most of the history gets written there, and the Indian National Archives in Delhi is a much more neglected place. I mean, it's a much more difficult place to work. It's got mosquitoes. They've got monkeys running around. There's actually a guy whose full-time job is to stop the monkeys taking over the building.
Yeah.
And it's eccentric. A lot of the stuff doesn't turn up, but it has these long opening hours. And once you've got a document, you can keep it for months. I like working. And as no one works there, if you can get in there and learn to use it and become familiar with that building, that is a treasure trove. Because what you've got in England is the letters that they sent home. What you've got in Delhi is their own head office stuff. So if something's going wrong, they don't tell the head office. It's like, imagine you're at college. You don't tell your mum and dad you're up.
Yeah, you hide that shit, basically.
You hide
Yeah.
All the stuff they're hiding is in the Indian National Archives. And the official version that they're sending home, however badly they fucked up, that they're giving a nice, pretty picture of it, which they're sending to the directors in London.
Yeah.
So that's what's in the British Library. But if you can get into the Indian National Archives, you get a much more full and much more dark picture with all the chaos and bloodshed and corruption and plunder.
Yeah, and I'm guessing the reality. That's what makes Anarchy such a great read, right? Because you've got both sides covered. You've got the letters from the inside, like the British Library version here, and all the real shit that's happening on the ground.
And it's odd. I mean, one of the things that I've been very lucky with is that you've now got a generation of younger historians coming up, writing really good stuff, like people like Manu Pillai, Ira Makoti. There's a whole lot of them. But when I first came here 20 years ago, there was this incredible A-team of Indian novelists. There was Rushdie, Naipaul, then Arundhati Roy, Amitav Ghosh, Vikram Seth, and so on and so on. But there were very few Indian writers winning prizes for non-fiction.
Yeah.
And very few people writing history in a way that you want to read. There were academics producing academic texts, which were written for other academics, but wasn't the sort of thing you'd want to read on the tube into work or take on a holiday or read for pleasure. They were just, academic.
Quite dense, factual papers, essentially.
Yeah, and also just written in academic language. That is its own code. And so the sort books that you were getting written in Britain, like Anthony Beevor's Stalingrad, which was, he broke into the Soviet archives just after the fall of the Berlin Wall, and he was able to translate all the Soviet archives and getting the Soviet version of events, which had never been told before in English, and wrote it in a way that was as exciting as a war movie. And as a result, this book sells a million copies around the world. That sort of book was not being written in India. There was no history that you'd actually want to read.
That reminds me of Rutherford on various cities around the world and the fictional weaving of the histories of cities that he does quite well.
Yeah, and there was, I was just very lucky that 20 years, in many ways, I had the field to myself. There were very few, the only other person, I suppose, writing that sort of book in India, but was for a different period, was Ram Guha, his India After Gandhi and all those books. And now, say, it's changing. There's some amazing young writers coming up, and Indians are writing their own history. But I managed to make a career. I'm now 55. I've done this since my mid-20s, writing this stuff and doing what would have been perfectly normal in British or European history, but was considered something unusual in India simply because no one else was doing it.
And again, like flipping back to that Star Wars thing, the idea that that your works haven't been sort of snapped up.
Avni, I said two more friends said Avni and Richard.
Lovely.
Nice to see you.
Lovely. That your work not being snapped up by someone like the BBC to be turned into a kind of like historical. Well, Downton Abbey is historical but fictional, but some big fucking epic like that. It's quite shocking to me that it hasn't.
Well, they've all been optioned, but the reason they've never been made is that they're obviously very expensive to make. All of them have these huge battles and a cast of thousands. And so, when White Moguls came out, it was initially bought by the BBC. They got Christopher Hampton, who'd just written Dangerous Liaisons. Do you remember that movie that Michelle Pfeiffer was discovered and Uma Thurman was discovered on? And they got Christopher Hampton to write it. The National Theatre was doing it, but it never happened. the costs were too high, and after a few years they gave up. But this time, Anarchy's been bought by Sid Roy Kapoor.
Look at Manisha Rajesh saying dickheads.
Thank you,
Indeed.
Manisha, for that kind contribution.
Another writing, drinking friend that knows that we are both indeed dickheads, so she can say that. That's fine.
You don't have to be a rocket scientist.
You know what I mean? Exactly. It's like, here's the right pair of dickheads on the screen. Yes, no shit, Sherlock. Well done, Manisha, for spotting that Will and I are indeed dickheads. Excellent.
I can't remember what we were saying before we were called dickheads.
You were talking about your work going into film and shit. So you said they've got
This time I sold it to Bollywood, and Sid Roy Kapoor is this amazing guy who, on one hand, has done things like Jodha Akbar and these massive Mughal epics.
Okay.
And knows how to, have 1,000 elephants on the screen.
Right.
On the other hand, he's done rather good little things, indies like Lunchbox, for example, which is a beautiful movie.
Okay.
And we've just been talking to a guy called Frank Dolger, who was also involved in Mughals at one point, who was the executive producer of Game of Thrones.
Cool.
So if he comes on board, I think it will happen.
Was he an actual producer, or was he one of the writers that fucked up the last season?
No, he was right there from the beginning.
Okay. Because they fucked that last season up massively. I was just like, dude, talk about all mouth and no trousers. It's just like, wicked.
I personally thought it wasn't too bad. I mean, I thought that final battle scene when they go off, the Dothraki go off into the distance with their torches, and then one by one the torches go out. I thought that was the most amazing moment.
But it made no narrative sense.
The ending didn't make huge narrative sense, but I thought it was a great spectacle. I watched it.
Interesting. Is there anything else really fucking nerdy that you love that people would be surprised that you love?
Well, I mean, the sort of thing I've been watching during lockdown.
Is it like Barbie's Nutcracker or something? Okay, fair enough.
But no, I don't know if we've seen Kingdom, which is this amazing South Korean zombie movie. It's set in 17th century South Korea, and it sounds like it's the most bizarre idea, but it is spectacular. On Netflix, strongly recommended. With the best hats you've ever seen on any production ever. I would be very pleased if I think we need to introduce some zombies into the anarchy. Just a jolly thing.
That'd be wicked.
East India Company zombies. That's what we need. Robert Clive coming back from the dead.
That'd be a total B movie, but I could see that shit. You could call it The Empire Strikes Back. Oh no, wait, that's taken. Fuck.
Good idea. Anyway.
But, yeah. So they've all been optioned. Has Anarchy been optioned? In fact, the last time we spoke and did an interview was at JLF, fucking years ago, when it was at Jaipur Lit Fest at the British Library. And didn't Riz option something off you?
Riz has never optioned anything. I would love if Riz came involved in Anarchy. I know he's looking around for. He's been investigating a lot of Mughal history. My friend Navina took him on this great big sort of tour of the Islamic department on the Met. He wanted to know more about all the art and the techniques there. And I don't know whether that's come to anything. So anyway, Riz, if you're watching this, you're very welcome aboard.
Just buy this book.
Yeah,
dude, I remember actually the last time I got talking about you and Riz again, I think it was recently, was about the Forgotten Masters exhibition. And did you curated that exhibition, right?
This is I've got the catalogue here. This is Forgotten Masters. This is the show which is on at the Wallace Collection, and it opened in December and was a surprise hit. It's been absolutely packed out since day one.
I haven't been to see it yet, bro. And you know what? I can't get in for love or money. It's ridiculous.
Just give me a call. I'm going to be doing a tour this weekend. Come on Saturday.
Yeah. All right, yeah, fuck it. Coming, wicked. All right, nice one.
But it's, it reopened last month, and it's on for another month now. It's been extended another 3 months, they've added. And then we hope it's going to move to the Met, move to New York. So,
wicked. And tell me, did you curated all the works on that, right?
So this was my I did a show a few years ago in the Asian Society in New York on late Mughal painting, and this one is so there's this whole world when the East India Company is taking over India. All the old Mughal painters who've been painting court scenes and so on are out of work, and this is the same period that Kew Gardens is being founded, that Captain Cook's going off to Australia and doing botanical studies. Joseph Banks is doing botanical studies of all the nature that they're discovering, kangaroos and plants and what have you. And so initially in Lucknow under Claude Martin, who founded the La Martiniere schools, and then in Calcutta, and then finally working up to Delhi, the Brits find that they can repurpose, in a sense, these Mughal artists and get them to paint extraordinary botanical pictures. And the results are things like this. I don't know whether you can see this. These extraordinary, hyper-detailed botanical and or just a picture on the front. These incredible stalks and so on. And so you get the detail and all the micro painting that you get in Mughal painting, but it's done against a white background. Exactly. They use one single hair of a squirrel's tail to paint.
Yeah.
And these are great masterpieces. And up to now, they've just been known as company school painting. And then the artists who did them have been sort of edited out of the picture. They've been airbrushed. But they have names, and and in about half of the cases, you can work out who painted them. Sometimes with signatures, sometimes with just by comparing them to other paintings that do have signatures. And we've arranged this by the different painters. So there's an amazing painter called Sheikh Mohammed Mir. There's another one called Sheikh Zainuddin, Yalapa of Vellore, and we even have pictures of some of these guys. This on the back is Yalapa of Vellore, and he's painting on a box. He's got a European watercolor set. He's also got his Mughal colors.
Proper remixing.
Astonishingly beautiful pictures, they've just been sitting in the archive, dismissed as sort of colonial art. But the artists are not colonial. The artists are amazing Indian master painters. So the idea was to give
but doing scientific works almost.
Some of them are scientific, a lot of them are nature pictures, but there's also work like this, the Nautch Girls of Delhi, the Tawais of the day.
Wicked.
And they're astonishingly gorgeous. So, or pictures of this guy is a guy called Kalla, who's just known as Kalla, who was the manservant of a guy called William Fraser. And this is him after he joins William Fraser's group. And so you get some of the greatest Mughal painting by some of the greatest artists, never been shown, never been put on, and the artists are totally unknown. So
Sick.
It's the first time this stuff has ever been shown in Britain. And my great ambition was to get it to the Red Fort. We're talking to the Delhi Art Gallery, who've got a lot of money, got a good relationship with the ASI, and if we can get this into India, it would be fantastic, because there's never been a big show of the masterpieces of this stuff.
Did you find them all in Britain?
So it's sourced mainly from Britain and America, from private collections and from the British Library. Kew Gardens turned out to have 1,000. There's a Ditty Mangal Das. Hi, Ditty. How are you? There's all sorts of friends turning up here.
There is. I've got to say, Bitter Black Jews. Yeah, easy. How's it going? And also Sean from Fabric, ex-Fabric. Big up, Sean. Yeah, man. This is quite a variety of.
I got my Fabric Live CD. So yeah, I should bring it out for signing by Sean.
Your Fabric Live CD. Wicked. Which one have you got?
The Sony did with there was
the knitted one. Yeah. With, my favourite one is John Peel's one. That's wicked.
I've never heard that. You were telling me about it.
Hang on. Yeah, I'll send it to you. In fact, on Saturday, I'm totally going to bug you for Saturday. In fact, there's one thing.
Yeah.
As well as this whole art sort of uncovering this exhibition, one thing I've noticed, particularly as we're on Instagram, is your photography. I'm just like, where the hell did this come from as well? Like, you've just been putting up some amazing photographs for the past few years. I'm like, what? Go on, bruv.
So this is what I used to do at school, actually. I used to, people that knew me in my teens remember me as this keen photographer. I spent my money on this lovely Contax camera after a summer job, and I used to, in those days it was black and white, and it was, you know, dark rooms and developing your own stuff. And I let that drift when I started writing, and recently rediscovered it. And I just have a Samsung phone. I just do it on my phone, but I put everything into black and white. And I've been having shows in Bombay, in Delhi, and in London. And I love it. It's a very nice. It uses a different part of the brain to the bit you use when you're.
I mean, I'm seriously impressed that you do that with your phone.
I didn't know that ugly Rye is still there on the thing. She's a great master of black and white, like her dad. And we got to do a show together sometime, Abney, if you're still there. I'd love that.
I was going to say, I'm impressed that you can use your phone to shoot, because the last time we met each other, you didn't have a fucking clue how to get on social media with your phone, let alone take photographs with it.
I struggled to get on today.
It was like a full-on uncle sort of like, haha, William uncle. Yeah, Karo, press this one. It's so funny. So funny.
That is entirely libelous note.
It's true, dude. It's so funny. Actually, I've got to say, there's some moments that I remember where we've, like, some hazy nights, we've been in various bars where there's been, I think there was one, I forget what this was, where it was somewhere and you asked me to turn your phone on for you because it just wouldn't turn on.
That is such bullshit.
Have I misremembered this? I'm sure maybe I've misremembered it. It does sound incredibly familiar. We've had some. So basically, I actually invited Will to a gig that I did in Delhi that was not very good. But I think you got punched in the head on the way in, right?
This is again. I've got no memory.
Wasn't it you and your nephew, right?
And in Delhi, much too Punjabi a town.
Yeah, do you remember that at all? Where you got decked in the head on the way in?
I've never been punched in the head ever in Delhi.
Dude, I'm sure that was what happened. Oh, okay, fine. We'll keep the more salacious chats offline.
I have been to see some not very good gigs, but
actually, you made it to a festival in Goa, which I was very impressed at.
That was good. That was fabulous. Yeah.
You and your whole family turned up to a festival in Goa, which was nice. I missed you at Magnetic Fields Festival. Unfortunately, our paths just didn't cross.
I like Magnetic Fields. I was doing a little talk, and they used to have talks in the middle of it in the day. Well,
Magnetic Words, I think it was called.
Yeah, and that's such a beautiful part of Rajasthan. Sisa Haveli, gorgeous spot.
Sorry, bro, I couldn't hear you. What?
Yeah. I said I love Magnetic Fields, and I love that part of Rajasthan. Sisa Haveli.
Yeah, it was beautiful. But I think because your thing was in the day and my sort of things are generally at night, I think our paths just never managed to cross through. Yeah,
I was during the day and you were at night. So I think I came and saw your thing. I think you probably wonder whether I was there among 10,000.
Really? But, was I doing Prince?
I've also seen. Anushka brought me to one of your things in Bombay once.
Oh yeah.
I remember you playing.
Well, I think we're very lucky that we get to get drunk all over the world. It's wonderful.
There's worse fates. There's worse fates.
This is very true. This is very true. And actually, JLF, Jaipur Lit Fest, you started that a while ago. It's now the biggest literary festival. Beg your pardon, I'm burping quite a lot in the world. And you're doing all sorts of stuff online, right?
So Jaipur, I co-founded very much not a single effort of my own. I did it with Sanjoy Roy and Namita Gokhale. And we're a very odd threesome, but it works very well because we all sort of cover each other's blind spots. Sanjoy has a brilliant business mind, which neither Namita or I do, and he's kept the whole thing together in a business sense. And he's a brilliant producer. I mean, the Jaipur has grown, and we had 1/3 last January, and he's done an extraordinary job expanding the venue, and it runs very smoothly, really well run. And then I do mainly the foreign invitations, the British and American and Caribbean and Latin American writers. Namita Gokhale does mainly the Desi writers, particularly the ones in not in English, all the Hindi, the Bengali, Marathi, Malayali, and so on, Malayalam, and so on. She's very passionate about all the literature which isn't in English, which people often forget about and ignore outside the home state of wherever. And it's been a very strong part of the programming. I think that we've had these very different interests. I mean, I'm good on the international writing. I'm good on the history and the art. Namita is a novelist, and she's particularly passionate about the Bhasha stuff, particularly in Hindi and Bengali. And we cover each other's blind spots. Without, if we didn't have all three of us, I think I couldn't do the business. Namita probably wouldn't be able to do the history, and so on. And it worked very well.
It's quite a triumvirate.
Yeah, and we all get on, and we've now got. I mean, before COVID, in the world before COVID, we had 6 festivals in America last year, in Texas, Boulder, New York, one in Toronto. We have one. We have 2 in Australia now, Adelaide and near Perth. And then we've got curtain raisers and little gigs in Mumbai and so on. And it's been a wonderful thing. I mean, there's a lot worse things than to ring up all your writer friends and get them to come and join you in some gorgeous spot and have a holiday in Australia.
It's interesting because I think you say that, and then I think that I met you in an after party for another literary fest in Bombay with Jeet and with Hanif and a few other people. And that began our ridiculous raucous friendship.
There was India was quite a late starter with the literary festivals. There were, Hay had been going 20 years, I think, in Britain before Jaipur started. And there was, Namita had done before me this, it wasn't a literary festival, but it was a great writers' festival at Nimrana, when everyone started fighting with each other. And Amitav Ghosh fell out with V.S. Naipaul, and V.S. Naipaul was rude to the American ambassador's wife.
This sounds like gangster shit. This is wicked. They just gave guns out and shit, and like drug dealers came in and fucking,
stupid woman talking to me? He demanded to be moved beside the American ambassador's wife. So it was that.
I love all this gangster shit, Will. I tell you what, this is just so refreshing to the stuff that I face like daily, or used to face daily. I'm now the fucking institute. Like, I'm now what I hated. But that's all just some gangster shit. The ambassador's wife fell out with this writer. That's wicked. Actually, having said that, you've taken me. I've been to a couple of parties with you where I've talked complete bollocks to somebody and then realized that they're like some esteemed writer of a worldwide like novel, like smash writer, and I've just talked to them about like Fuzzy Peaches and the Beatles for 5 hours for some fucking reason. So thanks for that.
Yeah, no, they're now everywhere, obviously, and in every city in India has a literary festival, and it's a positive thing. I think people sometimes quite bitchy about the literary circuit and so on, but I think it's a sign of a very healthy world where you've got all these writers performing and large audiences turning up. We get 1/3 of a million in total. The one in Chennai has hundreds of thousands. And people ask questions. They just, inevitably you're going to get the Dior sunglasses crowd turning up just to be seen and take some selfies. But the sessions themselves are packed up. You get very intelligent questions. And I'm very proud to play the small role in starting this thing.
Yeah, and I've got to be honest with you, because of Jeet introducing me to you guys and Nikesh and Nikita and the writers I know, generally I've been met with less dickheads from the writing world and more fun people like yourself, which has been really nice. It's been really refreshing. I'm just like, these writers are gangsters. This is so much fun. But yeah, bro. So look, on that note, I think we're running short of time because we're going to get kicked off on this time remaining. So I'm going to say thanks, bruv, for joining me. And
very good to see you. Get in touch about Saturday. That's an open invitation. If there's any space with COVID, they only allow so many people in the building. But I'll send a mail now and get you a ticket.
Thank you, bruv. Cool. And I'll chat to you offline. And let's grab a drink as well, a real one, on Saturday probably.
There's that nice restaurant, Ravinder Bogle, the wonderful Jaconi is just behind the Wallace collection. We can eat there.
Okay. Wicked. Nice one, bro. I'll see you Saturday. And thank you all for joining. Sorry, there was very few questions. Big love, everybody. And this, this was surprisingly swear-free. I know there was a few swear words. But anyway, big love, bro. See you soon, man. Bye.